Week 1 is finally here. Meaningful regular season NFL football is finally here. Um, it's been a long journey to get to this point, but we finally made it. And who isn't absolutely stoked for this season to finally kick off? All the storylines and, you know, teams to watch, players to watch, everything is every NFL season is very fun, but I feel like this one in particular, especially because last year, no fans, so many of the great things we missed out on. Just like with the return of college football, I feel like the NFL coming back this week has that same energy to it. And with the season kicking off today, it's time to make my picks for the opening week of the season. Last season, my picks weren't terrible. I went 150, 73, and 1. So not terrible, but I'm looking to do a lot better this year, and I think I will. So let's start off on a good note today, and let's start off with tonight's kickoff game. The Buccaneers hosting the Dallas Cowboys, the defending champions, bringing in America's team to begin their title defense. So I'm going to try and keep things as brief as possible because there are obviously 16 games and I don't want to be here forever. But this is a game that, you can talk about for a long time. I mean, that's why any sports channel you open these days, this is the only game they're talking about. But here's the thing, and it's about the Cowboys in this game because the Buccaneers speak for themselves. Obviously, bringing back all 22 starters from last year's Super Bowl winning team, they don't have any questions that need to be answered because they were all answered last season. But the Cowboys have question after question after question. And I think it's a bit of a culture problem because teams with strong cultures, like Seattle or Baltimore or something like that, have responded well to the NFL's COVID policies, but the Cowboys seemingly haven't because it's not just guys that are, gonna be missing time because of COVID. It's notable players, some of their best players, Zach Martin, CeeDee Lamb. These guys, I don't know what is going on. Maybe they haven't been vaccinated. Maybe they're not following protocol, but they're gonna be missing time with COVID. And then, of course, Dak Prescott. Is he fully healthy coming off of the leg injury last year? Is his shoulder healthy, which has bothered him all throughout camp? He didn't play in the preseason. He's going to play tonight, but is he going to be effective enough? I really don't know. There's just too many questions with the Cowboys, and also I just don't think they're good enough to compete like with the Bucs on a big stage. Their defense is still absolutely terrible. Their offense, if you're missing CD, that's a huge part of it. If Dak's not fully healthy, that's also big. Zeke hasn't been himself in a very long time, and Amari Cooper is aging. But yeah, that's why I don't think this game will be very close. Again, the Bucs have no questions that need to be answered. All they give us are answers. I think this is going to be a very strong first showing for their title defense. I'm expecting a big win for the Bucs. I got them winning this game 38-24 over the Cowboys, a fairly easy win for the defending champs on opening night. Then on Sunday, there are some really great matchups that I'm looking forward to watching. The first of which isn't exactly the best on paper, but I think it's going to be a fun game. You got the Eagles and the Falcons. So in my opinion, these are two of the three worst teams in the NFC. I think the worst teams in the NFC are, in no particular order, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Detroit. So you got these two teams duking it out in a battle of bad teams. But unlike the Detroit Lions, I think both of these teams have some very fun pieces. And I think it could make for a very fun football game. There are two things I'm looking forward to mostly in this game, and those are the two first-round picks on these teams. Kyle Pitts for Atlanta and Devontae Smith for Philadelphia. These guys were the two premier pass catchers in the SEC last year. Kyle Pitts at Florida and Devontae Smith at Alabama. Obviously, Devontae Smith won the Heisman. He was incredible. One of the best wide receiver seasons we've ever seen. The Eagles took a chance on him. I'm excited to see how it plays out. But also, this is a new era for the Eagles. It's the Jalen Hurts era, and they got guys like Devontae Smith. They got a couple other nice young pieces on the offense, Jalen Reagor, Miles Sanders. Defense is very much a question, but this is like a fun bad team, and I think so is Atlanta, because their offense is really good. I mean, it always has been. Even though they let go of Julio Jones, they still have Matt Ryan, still have Calvin Ridley. You bring in Kyle Pitts. It's going to be a fun offense, but just like the Eagles, their defense is terrible, but their defense is much worse. I mean, it was borderline historically bad last year. And it's the Falcons. They'll always find a way to screw things up when it matters most. So I think, although both of these teams are really bad, this is a very, very fun matchup. And also, like the Eagles and Falcons, this is like a matchup I grew up with in the NFL as being a very fun matchup. And so when I see these teams collide, I'm always expecting something entertaining to happen. I think the Eagles are slightly better, especially defensively, than the Falcons are. And also, if it comes down to saying who will make the plays when it matters most, you just simply cannot pick the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm taking the Eagles in a close one and a fun one, 28-27 over the Falcons. Our next game is the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a game that looks a lot better on paper than I think it actually will be, because I think this is a very easy one for Buffalo. Much like Tampa Bay, this is a very, very similar team to last year's team. I think they returned 20 or 21 out of 22 starters, or like 10 or 11, maybe 10 of the 11 offensively. Like, this is virtually the same team as last year's AFC Championship team. And that team was very, very good, and they finished the year on one of the hotter streaks, if not the hottest streak in all of football. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Steelers have not a lot going on that inspires a lot of confidence. Ben is aging. He's only here to collect a paycheck at this point. The offensive line is as bad as it's ever been. And although they did draft Najee Harris to help with that, you can't run behind that offensive line. I don't care if you're Barry Sanders or Walter Payton. The wide receiver core is still, good, but not without its questions. And then the defense is pretty good, obviously, but the Steelers are one of the most average teams in football to me. Buffalo is one of the more exceptional teams in football. So again, while I think this matchup looks good on paper, I think Buffalo wins it. I do have it as a 25-20 final, but I think that's more reflective of like maybe the Steelers getting some garbage time points or something like that. I expect Buffalo to be in control from wire to wire in this game. So Bills 25, Steelers 20. The Vikings and the Bengals is our next game in another kind of interesting game between two bad teams. I don't think the Vikings are terrible, but they're not great. They're not very good either. But they have, an abundance of offensive weapons, whether it's Justin Jefferson or Dalvin Cook or Adam Thielen, and Kirk Cousins is throwing the football, and that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, but he's not the worst quarterback in the world, as many people would have you believe. Meanwhile, the Bengals, if you know how I feel about them based on what I said in the AFC season preview, this is a rebuild, but with major quotes around it and an asterisk next to it. They took a chance on Jamar Chase instead of drafting Penei Sewell, and in the preseason, Jamar Chase did not look good at all. He dropped, I think, 5 passes. He only caught like 1 or 2 passes. So had some really bad drops. The only game I saw him in was when they played Washington, and he dropped 3 passes on 3 targets that were all very easy catches. And then earlier today or yesterday saying he can't see the ball well because it's too big or because there's no, white lines on it like in college football. Like these things seem a little bit concerning. I am very excited to watch Joe Burrow back on the field in this game, though. You can't help but love Joe Burrow. I felt terrible for him last year with the injury, and I'm excited to see him back. But it's a matter of how long before something similar happens again. It feels like one of the biggest proverbial slow motion car crashes in all of football. Like, how long until Joe Burrow inevitably gets hurt again because the Bengals will not do anything to help protect him? But like I said, I like their offense. Joe Mixon is a decent running back. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase is a very solid wide receiver core. Their defense, although, isn't very good. And that's why I think the Vikings will win this game pretty handily, because they have probably better offensive talent, and their defense is definitely better. Although it was terrible last year, it can't be any worse than it was last year. I like the Vikings in this game, 31-20. It could be interesting for a while, and I'm excited to see these two offenses, which should be, good offenses, go at it. But when it comes down to it, I think the Bengals will just kind of fold late. So 31-20, I have the Vikings beating the Bengals. Then you have one of the more lopsided, if not the most lopsided matchup of the week, the 49ers and the Lions. This is, simply put, one of the best teams in the NFC versus probably the worst team in the NFC. It doesn't matter if it's Jimmy Garoppolo, if it's Trey Lance. They could bring Alex Smith or Colin Kaepernick back, and the 49ers would still win this game in blowout fashion. The Lions just have nothing going for them. They traded away Matt Stafford. Now it's the Jared Goff era there, which nobody feels good about, I'm sure. Obviously, again, I really liked what they did in the first round, going and get Penei Sewell, who, well, I wouldn't say going and getting him because he kind of fell into their lap, but I can't say I feel confident about a future in Detroit. I still hate the Dan Campbell hire. There's just nothing to look forward to here. They don't even have a lot of great young pieces at skill positions to make me feel interested at all in what's going on there. Meanwhile, San Francisco is, back healthy, locked and loaded, ready to make another potential Super Bowl push. I think they have a great chance to do so. And again, it doesn't matter if it's Jimmy or Trey at any point in the season, this team will be just fine simply based on how good the roster is from top to bottom. And not many of their games will be as easy as this one on Sunday in Detroit. I have the Niners winning this one 27-10. This is probably the biggest blowout waiting to happen this week in the NFL. San Francisco is currently a 7.5-point favorite. I think that's the freest bet you'll ever see. So San Francisco big over Detroit. Then you have one of the more interesting, high-powered offense potentially games of the week. The Cardinals at the Titans. This game just screams like college football energy. It's just going to be a shootout. I don't know what the over-under is, but just take the over right now. Don't even look it up. Just take the over. I mean, just the pure talent on both of these offenses. Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, DeAndre Hopkins. There's a crazy amount of talent on both sides. And then another thing is that neither of these defenses are really all that great. Tennessee obviously has just a terrible defense because they can't get after the passer. And the Cardinals have a good defense on paper, but for some reason they never seem to have a good defense on the field. So this is going to be a shootout in my opinion. I'm very much looking forward to it because I don't have a dog in the fight and I just like watching shootouts from a neutral standpoint. Usually in a situation like this, I would like the Titans because they're the home team and Arizona's coming all the way out to the East Coast for a 1 p.m. start. That's 10 a.m. In Arizona, I believe. So it might be a little bit tricky for them. I believe in that philosophy of West Coast teams coming out to the East Coast, and I also believe in home field advantage. But like I said, I don't trust Tennessee's defense. They did pretty much nothing to get better at the things they need to get better at. They did bring in Bud Dupree, but he can't do it all on his own. The Cardinals, like I said, still have those defensive players, Byron Murphy, Budda Baker, J.J. Watt, to make plays when it matters, and I think that will be the difference late in this game. But I think it's going to be a heck of a football game to watch. I have the Cardinals winning this one 33-30 in potentially the most entertaining game of Week 1. Then another very interesting interconference matchup in Indianapolis with the Colts hosting the Seahawks. The Colts are another one of those teams with just so many questions. the Carson Wentz Quentin Nelson injury situation has seemingly gotten better. You know, they say Wentz is on track to play this weekend. He's been practicing. They say he looks good. But it's like I said in my AFC season preview. Carson Wentz is not the type of guy who can stay healthy for all 17 games now. And even if he's good enough to go, he's not going to be 100%. And Carson Wentz at anything less than 100% is just not a good quarterback. And a lot of other players have been dealing with COVID situations. I don't get it because it feels like the Colts are a team that should have this thing down pat, but they don't for whatever reason. Meanwhile, the Seahawks are another one of those teams that just doesn't have any questions. This is a 100% vaccinated team. Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, these guys are all back, ready to go. The defense figures to be a little bit better. Again, they cannot be as bad as last year. But in any case, I think that this will be a win for Seattle, simply because Indianapolis currently has too many questions. And while I like that roster and I like that team from top to bottom, I know I was very harsh on them. This one will just be a little bit too tough for them. Russ always starts the season super hot in Seattle, and I don't think the season will be any different. So I like the Seahawks, but I think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a tight game. Defenses will dominate, in my opinion, despite the fact that, like I said, Russ always starts the season hot. I think the Colts defense will be able to contain him to an extent. I like the Seahawks in this game 24-20, but it should be a good one. And then we have the football team of Washington, our season debut against, I was about to say San Diego, the Los Angeles Chargers. This game is flying under the radar, I think, of too many people. This might be the single most interesting matchup of Week 1. You have the offensive rookie of the year versus the defensive rookie of the year in Justin Herbert versus Chase Young lining up across from each other for the first time ever. You have, two of the more up-and-coming, bright future teams in the NFL, two very strong rosters from top to bottom with two fairly new head coaches. Two teams that are going through, I don't want to say rebrands, but the Chargers between the new uniforms and moving to LA, and then obviously Washington is going through a rebrand. This is just a really, really interesting collision of teams that are on the come up in the NFL. And then within those teams, you have storylines as well, like Washington, now with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I've given plenty of thoughts on that. And then the Chargers, now, again, they have Justin Herbert. He's their guy for the future. They've revamped the offensive line. Their defense is back healthy. These are two teams primed to make playoff pushes in their respective conferences. And now they get to battle in Week 1. It should be a blast, honestly. I think this is going to be a really, really good game. I think both offenses will come out swinging. It'll take a while for the defenses maybe to get settled in. I trust the Washington defense a lot more than Los Angeles's. Not even being biased, just from a completely objective standpoint. It's the best defensive front in football, potentially the best defense in football. And while Justin Herbert has proven that he can dismantle even the best of defenses, I think that when it comes down to it, this Washington defense can make the plays necessary to win the game, or Fitz, because Fitz has shown us throughout the seasons that to start the season, he's usually really good. And so if there's any month I feel confident about Fitz in, it's September. And for those reasons, I think that Washington's going to pull away from this one victorious. It wouldn't shock me if it goes the other way. Obviously, Justin Herbert is the guy who can do that. But in this one, I have to stick with my guys and take Washington in a very tight, very entertaining football game, 27-24. Don't be surprised if this one goes to overtime. Then you have one and actually two of the more boring matchups in Week 1, so I'll just breeze by these. The Panthers and the Jets, a.k.a. the Sam Darnold Bowl. The Jets are one of the worst teams in football. They will not be competitive in many, if not any, of their games. This is the start of the Zach Wilson era, which doesn't mean anything to me because I thought he was one of the worst first-round quarterbacks. I think he was the worst quarterback taken in the first round. and he was taken second overall. That still doesn't make sense to me. Also, Robert Saleh, his first game in his first season as head coach, it's going to take a while for him to get used to things versus the Panthers, who are now seemingly in a good situation. It's year 2 under Matt Rule. They bring in Sam Darnold. The offense looks like it's going to have some good things going on. And their defense has a ton of nice young pieces between Derek Brown or Brian Burns or J.C. Horn, the rookie they took 8th overall, cornerback. This was just a decent team versus a really bad team. The Panthers will win this game very easily. I have them winning it 24-13. And then you have the Jaguars taking on the Texans. The only reason anybody cares about this game is because it's the debut of the Jaguars, the new-look Jaguars with Urban Meyer at the helm and Trevor Lawrence under center. And I guess that's for good reason. I mean, everyone can't wait to see what Trevor does in the NFL, and everyone can't wait to see what Urban does in the NFL. Maybe those two things are for different reasons, but that's aside from the point. I'm also interested to see what this team does, but not in this scenario because they're up against the Texans, who are most likely the worst team in football without Deshaun Watson, as he'll be a healthy scratch every single week, as they've reported. So it'll be Tyrod Taylor starting for the Houston Texans. And what does that mean? It just means they're going to be even worse, a lot worse, because even last year, when they had Deshaun and he was tearing it up, they were a 4-12 football team. So this is just a disaster in Houston. And the Jaguars are very lucky that they got this break with the Texans as their first opponent, because it'll be a opening day win for Urban and Trevor and company. Jaguars win big. Texans don't score much, in my opinion. I got 27-9. The Jaguars win this game, and that's all I want to talk about with that. I'm ready to move on to the late afternoon games, starting with, in my opinion, what is going to be the best game of the week. The Chiefs hosting the Browns. This is a rematch of last year's divisional. In my opinion, it's a preview of this year's AFC Championship game. These are my top 2 teams in the AFC, not by record, but definitely by potential. And the fact that we get to see them play in week 1 is honestly really, really cool to me, because it's good for my brand. The Chiefs, I'd say the biggest question with them in this game is how does that new offensive line look, and how does the defense look without Frank Clark? I think the defense will be fine. I don't think they'll be getting much of a pass rush because the Browns' offensive line is that good. But the secondary should be able to hold up against Cleveland's pass catchers, although they are very talented and in abundance. But it doesn't really matter what the defense does as long as Patrick Mahomes is slinging it on the other side of the football. And he's throwing it to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. But again, that revamped offensive line, does it hold up? Maybe we'll see. The Browns' pass rush isn't one to write home about, but it's not a terrible one either. I mean, any line with Myles Garrett coming off the edge is a good line. So we'll see how the Chiefs' offensive line holds up. But again, in my opinion, it doesn't matter as long as Mahomes is throwing the football. That being said, I love Cleveland's chances in this game. I just really like this team. I really like this roster from top to bottom. I can't wait to see what Baker does this year. I can't wait to see what this team does in year 2 under Kevin Stefanski. Odell is back for what it's worth. I know he hasn't figured out with Baker yet, but I just know that they will work it out eventually. This is going to be a heck of a game. And while I like the Browns, and I actually would pick them if this game was in Cleveland, I'm picking the Chiefs for 2 reasons. One is just that it's not in Cleveland, it's in Arrowhead. The first game back with all those fans in Arrowhead, it's going to be a very, very tough environment. Baker's never played in Arrowhead at full capacity, I don't think. And the Chiefs are just going to use that energy to their advantage. They always do. And the second reason is that it's September. And Andy Reid is probably the greatest September football coach of all time because he just knows how to get it done in September. And Patrick Mahomes, as it stands, is the greatest September quarterback of all time. The stats I'm about to read you are video game stuff, but they are true. Patrick Mahomes has started 10 games in the month of September in his young NFL career. He's won all 10. And in those 10 games, he's thrown 32 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Just let that sink in. 32 touchdowns, 0 picks in 10 games, 10 wins as a starter in the month of September for Kansas City. It doesn't make any sense, but you're not going to slow these guys down in September, and especially not in week 1, giving Andy Reid all that time to game plan. So I have to stick with the Chiefs in this game, but I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I'm excited to watch it. I got the Chiefs winning 30-27, but they better look out for if/when these teams meet in January, because it might be a different story there. Another game in the late window that could turn out to be very interesting because it has one of the better storylines of the week is the Patriots playing the Dolphins. Now, obviously, the storyline here is Mac against Tua. Just a week or so ago, the Patriots releasing Cam Newton. Mac Jones is now the full-time starter. Very interesting development. And now he gets to play against the guy he backed up in college, the guy he replaced in college, Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. So the Patriots, again, like I mentioned in the season preview, made a big splash on free agents. It's a completely different looking offense than last year with Cam. And with Mac under center, I mean, him and Lawrence were the two most pro-ready quarterbacks of last year's draft. And, you know, Trevor is in Jacksonville. Mac is in New England. He has Bill Belichick. He has one of the best offensive lines in football. He has an incredible offensive repertoire of talent, you know. He has a great defense behind him. He's in a much better situation. I think I picked the Patriots to go to the playoffs, and I said it doesn't matter whether Mac or Cam is starting, but I think this is honestly a better team with Mac under center because he fits the system a lot better. Meanwhile, the Dolphins are in a very similar place as last season. It's still a very good team from top to bottom, but Tua is the one thing holding them back. Maybe in year 2 he figures it out. They brought in his college buddy Jalen Waddle, their first-round draft pick, to help with him. They also signed Will Fuller, so they're doing everything they can to make Tua's life easier. The question now just becomes, can he perform? Can he be what they need him to be? I don't know. I really don't know how much faith I have in Tua. Only time will tell, but on paper, these two teams matching up this week, I have to rock with the Patriots. I like the quarterback better. I like I'd take Bill Belichick over Brian Flores. I know the disciple has been very good in Miami, but I can't really take anybody over Belichick. And I also like the Patriots defense a lot more. So I think it'll be an interesting game. Mac versus Tua was one of the more interesting storylines of the week, but I'm rocking with the Patriots 27-20 over the Dolphins. Then you got the Packers taking on the Saints in Jacksonville, obviously because of the Hurricane Ida situation, which has just really ravaged New Orleans, and it's really unfortunate what's going on. But this game's taking place in Jacksonville. The Saints, the Jameis era begins for them. The Drew Brees-less era begins for them. But it's not going to be pretty in week 1. No Michael Thomas, Jameis's first game. His first start in New Orleans. He has the talent, sure, and he was able to sit for a year under Drew Brees. And anyone who's seen Jameis talk about Drew Brees knows how much he means to him. So who knows? Maybe Drew Brees mentored all of Jameis's issues out of him. But it's pretty much just him and Alvin Kamara on that offense. And their defense, while still talented, is definitely not as good as years past. Especially in the secondary, which has been really, really bad as of late, especially last year. And they have to deal with Aaron Rodgers and that Packers offense, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams. It's a tall task in week 1. Also, Aaron Rodgers, like Mahomes, is just an incredible September quarterback. When he gets to rock the short sleeves and play in a warm weather city like Jacksonville, he's going to show up and show out. So we'll see how this not revenge tour, but kind of like last dance season goes for the Packers. But this should be a win for them in pretty easy fashion, in my opinion. I got the Packers winning this game 33-20. The last game of the afternoon games, you have the Giants hosting the Denver Broncos. This looks like a very boring game on paper, but it's not also without its storylines. I think the biggest one being the Teddy Bridgewater situation in Denver, winning the starting job over Drew Lock. I think that makes them a better football team. Teddy makes a lot less mistakes. Drew Lock is a turnover machine. Teddy is not. He's a much safer, conventional quarterback, and I think he makes this team a lot better, especially because they have a plethora of offensive and defensive talent. This is one of the better young rosters in all of football. They're just missing their quarterback. But Teddy was the right move over Drew Lock. And I think that this is a very decent football team. But the Giants are in a very similar situation. They have a good team from top to bottom with a lot of nice young pieces on both the offense and the defense, but the quarterback situation is lacking. And that's Daniel Jones. This is his make or break year, his do or die year. I don't have a lot of faith in him. I don't think anybody really does. But that doesn't mean that they won't get it done in this game. I think the Giants are going to win this game. When it came down to it, I had to pick something really obscure as to why the Giants are winning this game. But I'm picking them because they are the home team. The Broncos are coming all the way out east. Now, granted, it is a normal start time for them because it's a 4:25 Eastern kick. But if you're going to say, oh, well, why didn't you use that logic for the Cardinals? It's because the Cardinals just gave me more to like. I think the Giants give me a little bit more to like than the Broncos do. And I think that I trust their offense just a tiny bit more than I trust the Broncos offense. So I got the Giants winning a close one here, 23-17. It could be an overtime thing. It could be a late game heroics thing. We'll see. But this could be one of the more interesting matchups of week one. Then our first Sunday nighter of 2021, we have the Rams hosting the Bears. Now, if Justin Fields was starting this game, it'd be a lot more interesting, and maybe it'd be a little bit closer. But with Andy Dalton starting, it makes this game a lot less interesting, and it's going to be not close. Obviously, maybe sitting Justin under Andy for just a little bit might be the right move. Historically speaking, sitting the young rookie under the vet tends to work out. But Andy Dalton just isn't the guy for this team long term, obviously. And while this is a good roster from top to bottom, Andy isn't the guy to win them any games, but especially not against the Rams team with such an incredible defense and now such an incredible... they've always been really good on both sides of the ball under McVay, but this is the year that it could really all come to fruition, obviously, with Matt Stafford coming in from Detroit. I think this is going to be a tough test at first for this Rams offense. The first couple of quarters, these teams might be feeling out each other's offenses and defenses. So it could be close for a little bit, but I think in the second half, this is a Rams game. I think Stafford's going to look good in his debut. I think that defense is going to look great. And I think Andy Dalton is going to look bad, and the calls for Justin Fields are going to be louder than they ever have been before. I like the Rams in this game in a not very close one, 29-13 on Sunday Night Football. Then our final game on Monday night, the Ravens going out to Vegas to take on the Raiders. This is honestly a pretty interesting game, at least on paper, because the Raiders just make everything interesting. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good team, and the Ravens are a significantly better team than they are. The J.K. Dobbins injury stuff obviously is extremely unfortunate, but if there's any team that's built to overcome adversity and persevere and stuff like that, it's the Ravens, especially under John Harbaugh. They've done it time and time again, and they still have the talent on both sides of the ball to do what they need to do even without Dobbins. I'm very excited to see what Lamar Jackson does. Obviously, they've brought in a lot of pieces to help the passing attack in Baltimore. I know Rashad Bateman is hurt right now, but I think that this team is going to be just fine, especially to start the season. This is one of the better regular season teams in all of football against one of the most painfully mediocre teams in all of football that has no business being as mediocre as they are. I think it's going to be fun. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in the desert. But the Ravens' defense, and their offense for that matter, but their defense is just too good to let the Raiders beat them. So they'll shut the door late and secure the win for Baltimore. I have the Ravens winning this one 34-24 in a very fun, entertaining Monday night cap to close out week 1. So those are my picks for week 1 of the NFL season. We'll see how they all pan out. I'm excited to be doing this on a weekly basis. Next week, be on the lookout for the weekend review, first power rankings of the season, and then obviously our week 2 picks this time next week. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys enjoyed the games this weekend starting tonight. Football's back. Can't wait to watch it. All the relevant links will be in the description, as the links to the season previews for the AFC and the NFC. So make sure you go check those out, as well as everything else. Hit all the relevant buttons, the likes, the subscribes, the shares. You know what to do. It's all very appreciated. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one.